when you start solids, don't look at it as calorie intake. Look at it as an activity. Because if you look at it as an activity, you will focus on your child building the skills. I do get a little bit annoyed with some food companies who say no added sugar, all natural, because it's very misleading for parents. Big hello and warm welcome to all our modern Indian parents out there. Thank you for joining us. This is our very first episode. We're so excited. I'm Sanchita. I am a nutrition consultant for babies and toddlers, and I help parents all around the world when it comes to meal times, making sure it's memorable and making sure that we're offering our kids nutrient dense food. I'm joined with my co host, Rinie Gupta.
Hi, everyone. I'm Readiness. I'm a certified sleep consultant for babies and toddlers. I think it's my mission in life to just have well rested families all around the world. But I think one thing that both of us have in common is that first and foremost, we are mums. We are
Yeah,
mums who
yeah,
have gone through
exactly.
our own share of struggles. I have a 2.5-year-old now. Sanchita, how about yours?
Yeah, I have twins and they're 5. So, yeah, it's been a journey. I think we need to talk about why we are even here.
This was 2 years ago when we connected with a common
Yeah.
client because I worked with this mama, and then a few months later she went and worked with Sanchita, and then she came back to me and she said that, like, you should really get in touch with Sanchita. Like, she's got a very similar vibe as you, and I think both of
Yeah.
you share like common like philosophies in how you look at things and how you look at parenting. And that's how we got connected, and we have just been kind of like been in touch since then. But I think when we were talking about the podcast, like, we were just talking one day, and then we were like, hey, I really want to start a podcast because I like making content. The best way of making content for me is talking, because I love to talk. And then
Yeah,
Sanchita is
me
like,
too.
oh my God, no way. Like, I am
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
been thinking about making a podcast as well. And the next day I messaged her. I was like, okay, I've got something wild. Like, why don't we just do it together? No.
Yeah. Like the conversations we're having is stuff we're like, wait, we should share this with our clients or we should tell them as well. So, this is the conversations we are having every day with each other, anyways. So, we're like, why don't we put on a
Yeah.
platform so we can share it with everyone else? And especially that modern Indian parent, because we definitely go through things that a lot of others don't. And it's just so insightful to kind of get some feedback, know we're all in this together. And, that's why we're here. So, we
Yeah.
hope you guys really enjoy this podcast and we're really looking forward to it. So I think we should just get started on our first topic.
Absolutely. So,
Um,
Sanchita, you
s-
want to tell us about the first topic today?
yeah, so our first topic, and I think there's so much confusion, right, about when to start solids. I think it's just mind blowing because literally your pediatrician will tell you to start at 4 months. Instagram will tell you to start at 6 months. Your in-laws are like, just start like at any random time. And then your friends are doing all different things. And how was your experience when you started solids?
Okay, I think I was definitely getting a little bit of advice on starting solids from Instagram. So I
Right.
wanted to start at 6 months,
Yeah.
but then I had started going back to work when my baby was around 5 months old, and then I would come back, and my mom would tell me like, "Hey, you know what? I gave her some dal ka pani today, and I gave her some like rice starch water today," and I was just like, why are you doing that? But I would say
Yeah.
we properly started solid like right after the 6 months, like at the half year birthday that we celebrated.
Right. Right.
But I know we made a lot of mistakes in starting solids, and I'm really glad that you're going to be telling all the parents who are listening today about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And like, even for
What
me,
about
right?
you?
So,
Like,
like,
how was it like for your kids?
yeah, so I started they were premature. So that also gets it a bit more confusing. So I started at five
Yeah,
months corrected age. So they were actually 7 months, but corrected
right.
5 months. And I remember, like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was like a time to start. I just went to the doctor and I'm like, yeah, are they ready? And he's just like, yeah, yeah, go ahead. Just offer them like congee, which in Hong Kong is just literally rice and water. And I was just like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I remember even going to the shop and I was like, okay, I need to get some plates and like utensils. I'm like, why are there 100 spoons? And then I literally just chose based on like which color was nice. I was like, okay. And then literally I started. And now looking back, I think for both of us, we're like, okay, look, we are smart, we are educated, we have access to all this information.
Yeah,
How did we end up just still falling for it and starting too early, or letting our parents give them things like dal ka pani and all of that? Like, how did that happen? Sometimes I'm quite amused
yeah.
by the whole situation, but I was like, okay, and I'm sure you have clients, like even I have clients who are doing the exact same thing.
Absolutely. I think that's what, like, we as new parents, there's so much information overwhelm. Like you said, we have
Yeah,
all the right information, but because there's so much of it out there, that we start relying on the two most trusted figures in our life. One is our doctor,
yeah,
and the other
yeah,
one is probably like a grandparent, like whether it's your mom or your
exactly,
mom-in-law,
yeah.
because you trust them. You're like, okay, they have raised kids before. But the
Or
issue
the
with that is
nanny.
that they
The
raise kids.
nanny
Oh, the
is a big
nanny,
one.
right? If you've got a
Yeah,
nanny,
yeah,
then like I definitely did that with mine. Like I think in the
yeah,
newborn phase, and I suffered because I was following her advice too much because I was like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to go to the next most experienced person around
yeah,
me. And the problem is that I think if you talk about our moms, the last time they handled a baby was like 30 years ago when we were
exactly,
babies.
exactly.
So it's a little bizarre to me that we still do that. Of course, we love them, and they have so much wisdom to share with us.
Of
But when
course.
it comes to starting solids or sleep and this and that, I'm just like, I think there's definitely a better way of getting information. Doctors as well, right? Like I
Yeah,
love my pediatrician, right? But
yeah,
I'll tell you, very very often I will come across clients. I work with them around the age of 5 6 months, and they
yeah.
come to me and then share with me that, like, oh, my baby is 6 months old and we are doing 3 meals a day
I
because a
know.
doctor asked us to, because that's going to help to improve sleep. And I'm like, what? No. I'm sure you come across this in your line of work as well.
Yeah, like every day I have people messaging me, oh, my child is 4 months, I want to start solids, and have to be like, okay, wait. Because, see, end of the day, we love our pediatricians. They are there to make sure that our kids are growing and they're happy and all of that. But even like you have spoken to pediatricians and I've spoken to them, they have told me that we have not been updated on the latest information on
Yeah.
starting solids. They're like, what is baby
Yeah.
led weaning? Like, a lot of them are very clueless, and it's not their fault. They've just not been given that updated course. So, just like our
Yeah.
parents and even the nannies, they are using just what they know and they're doing the best they can with that information. And I think that's why
Absolutely.
you and me do what we do now, because we've realized that there's a gap there, and we are just trying to help parents make the right decisions. So we love our pediatricians, we love our nannies, but we really, really, as a modern Indian parent, need to be aware that there is this gap and make that change. And that's exactly why we do what we do.
So tell me,
Yeah.
Sanchita, we've spoken about the right timing of starting solids, right? And you mentioned that it's 6 months.
Yes.
But what are some signs that you would look for in
Yeah.
babies,
Yeah.
when besides just being of that age?
Exactly. And I always say start around 6 months, because we know every baby is different, right? So, but there are certain signs
Yeah.
that I need to see are happening. So instead of, if your doctor says
Right.
start at 5 months, say, okay, great. But I want you to look back at these four signs first to make sure. And the reason we say around
All
six
right.
months is because that is when your kid will start showing these signs. So the number one sign is that your child can sit with minimal support. I don't need them to sit on their own. But when you put them on the high chair, I want them stable. I don't want them like wobbling and not good head and neck control, because
Yeah.
how are they going to pick up the food and put it in their mouth? So, number one, sit with
Yeah.
minimal support. Okay. Number two is when they take a spoon and put it in their mouth or a teether, I want that tongue thrust reflex gone. I don't want them to stick their tongue out. And that normally only happens around 6 months where that goes,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be feeding them food and they're like kind of spitting it out as well. So that's the second one. The third one is I want them to have hand eye mouth coordination, because, yes, even if you don't want to follow baby led weaning, I get it. But what we want to do is make sure the baby is in control of mealtime. So I want them to be able to pick up things and try and put it in their mouth. So they need to have that hand eye mouth coordination. So again, you'll see at 4 or 5 months, your child will start picking up things, trying to put it in their mouth. Once they have that, at meal times, it'll be easier for them to actually pick up food and put it in their mouth. And the last
Right.
sign is that they should show an interest in food. So around 4 or 5 months, start bringing them to the table, let them start looking at you and being like, what is she putting in her mouth, and getting excited about it. Because, of course, then if they're seeing that, they'll be more willing to put it in their mouth, when it actually comes to meal
Yeah.
times. So a lot of people look at one sign separately. I need you to look at all of them together. Like, a lot of people come and tell me,
Right.
oh, my child just is staring at us when they want to eat. But I'm like, yeah, but your child is not able to sit well. So how will they be able to put it in their mouth themselves? So I want you to look at all these four signs together. Some babies reach it at,
Yeah.
a week before 6 months, some at 6 months, some a week later. They're going to be eating their whole life, guys. Really, let's not rush it.
My God, this is so eye-opening because these are literally signs that no one ever tells you about. The only sign that is ever told you is like age. Just go by the age, and if they hit
I
that
know.
certain age, but developmentally, babies could be so different, right? And I think
Exactly.
as a
Yeah.
sleep consultant, literally, like the thing that people tell me the most that they are starting solids for is sleep. Baby's not sleeping
Oh
well,
my God.
baby's
I
waking
get
up
that
a
all the
lot,
time.
everybody's telling them, yeah, they're like, probably just hungry. Breast milk is not enough. Formula is not enough. They need the calories from the solids. And I'm just like, no, because the thing is, when they're just starting to eat solids, they're eating so
Right.
little that
Yes.
it cannot be a significant caloric input coming in from the
It cannot.
solids.
Yeah, and I always tell my clients this is the number one thing. I'm like, when you start solids, don't look at it as calorie intake. Look at it as an activity. Because if you look at it as an activity, you will focus on your child building the skills. I always say eating is like crawling and walking, right? Like every
Yeah,
baby will crawl and walk at different stages. Some do it right away, some need more time. Same thing with eating.
yeah,
How do we expect to just put food in front of our kids and for them to just gobble it all up? Some kids will be like, what is that? Like, they need time to
yeah,
get comfortable and, all of that. So that's why I feel like, honestly, I think for us, I don't know, I think as Indian parents, especially a lot of us live in like joint families. So we have a lot of pressure, from people, the grandparents and, all
yeah,
the people around, like, start right away. You're starving your child. Like yesterday, my client just messaged me. She's like, my family keeps telling me that I'm starving my child because my child is 6 months and is only on one meal and he's actually enjoying meal times and eating himself. And I always say, put yourself in your child's position, right? Like, do you want to be gobbling up food at 6 months when your tummy is so tiny and just figuring life out? But I
yeah.
still get these messages every day, and I'm sure you do as well.
I think like for me, it's often the time like I am often scaling back meals because
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
I'm working with a 6 month old and like I mentioned earlier, if they have started with 3 meals a day, I know for a fact that milk is being compromised, calories and the
Yes.
nutrients that they need from milk is being compromised. So I'm scaling back meals and I'm telling them, no, cut it back down to one. Focus on the skill, focus on, like you said, making it an activity because if you get too focused on the quantity, that's where the issue of
Picky
force
eating
feeding and the
happens. Yeah.
stress for
Yeah.
moms. Like, you won't believe it, but when I started solids, right, I got into like
Yeah.
I got this chart from this mom,
Yes. Yes.
who had a baby at around the same age as mine, and it was a very clear chart in terms of defining the number of teaspoons and tablespoons that a
I
baby
know.
should
I
be
did the
eating at
same.
every age.
Yeah.
And I used to get so stressed by it. And I'm just like, okay, if I'm preparing this puree, I used to literally measure out the puree. Like, okay, this is like
Yeah.
90 ml of this puree,
Yeah.
and this is the
Yeah.
meal for my child. And if she doesn't eat that, I'm gonna keep trying till she finishes it.
And
In
that's
the
when the
day, oh my gosh.
totions, all of that comes in.
The singing and the dancing began.
Yeah.
I think for one thing I was
Airplane
very firm on
spoon.
is that I don't want to.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Yes, the airplane spoon, the dreaded
Yeah.
airplane spoon. Like
Yeah.
I'm glad that I was very firm on the fact that there's going to be no screens around,
Yes.
eating. But then in the end, I ended up becoming entertainment,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
We
it
just were
was
singing
it
songs and
was
like, yeah. Or like you say,
so stressful.
look at that bird, and then you shove it in their mouth. And then I always use
Yeah,
this example with my clients. I'm like, imagine you're at a restaurant, okay? You're sitting down
yeah,
and the waiter brings you something you've never seen before. Because even when we start solids,
yeah,
we're giving our kids foods they've never had. So they're sitting down,
absolutely.
you're sitting down, they bring you something you've never seen. Are you going to sit and shove it in your mouth? No. You're going to look at it, you're going to touch it, you're going to watch someone else eat it, and then maybe you'll just try it. And you're not going to finish the whole thing. Then you'll take in the
Yeah,
taste. Maybe the second time you see it, you'll be like, okay, I'll have a bit. But no, with our
yeah,
kids,
yeah,
we're like, here, this is the first time we're giving you dal and rice. You need to finish this
yeah,
120 ml. Like, imagine doing the same thing for you. You would be uncomfortable. And the
yeah,
second example I give
yeah,
is, imagine you're at a restaurant and you're eating a food you like, okay? So suppose your baby loves like ragi porridge and you give your child that, okay? And the baby's like, okay, eating. And then after two, like there's 2, 3 bites left only. And they're like, we're good. But you're like, no, 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 you need to just finish these last two bites. So I use the example at a restaurant. You finish your pasta, which you love, and there's two, three pieces left, and you're like, I'm good. And then the chef, the waiter, everyone comes outside and they're staring at you and they're like, no, 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 you cannot leave till you finish those last two bites. And you're like, look, but I'm telling you, I'm full, I'm happy, I enjoy the meal. Are you
Yeah.
going to come to that
Yeah.
restaurant again? No, you're going to be like, they're forcing me to finish my food. And it's the same thing
Yeah.
with kids. We have so many expectations for them. And you know what? It's not our fault. It really isn't our fault. A lot of times, and I'm sure you felt guilty, that
Yeah.
mom guilt thing happens, but it's not our
Yeah.
fault because there's just too much conflicting information. There's all these food companies coming out and marketing to us and giving us wrong stuff. We have our own
Yeah.
relationship with food as well. We've been force fed our entire life. So it is kind of
Yeah.
in the back of our mind. So there's all these factors. So look, mom and dads, don't blame yourself.
Yeah.
But I think for us now, we really can make a change. And I think you've seen it with sleep. I've seen it with food. The clients that have worked with us and they've had the right attitude, the ones who have had the right mindset and attitude, it's amazing to see how their
Yeah.
child has come into their own in terms of respecting their sleep and respecting their, their food, and their hunger cues.
Very much so. I think there's so much change in, like, it's the conditioning that needs to happen. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
like what we need to do for ourselves as well. Going from having that mentality that you need to finish your plate, like you cannot get up from the
Yeah.
dining table until you have cleaned your plate out.
Can't waste
That is something
food,
that, at least the
right?
mentality. Yeah,
Yeah.
I grew up with that. That we
Same.
had to finish
Yeah.
off our plates. So we kind of tend to pass that on to our kids as well. And I think that's kind of where we need to scale back. Same thing with sleep.
Yes.
What I see is that when we were kids, I think sleep wasn't given a lot of importance. We were like, okay, if there's a late party,
Yeah.
sure, let's just do that. Big
I
deal.
know.
What, you sleep one lesser one night, and then it just kind of
Yeah.
rolls into this pattern of not having a good relationship with sleep. And that's something
Yes.
that we can change as well.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So actually,
So
so many of my friends tell me like they have sleep issues, like insomnia and all of these things as well. Like actually, you don't
yeah,
realize a lot of this stuff, like even our eating habits as adults, is related to the
yeah,
way we were fed as kids. And there's studies showing that.
yeah. Absolutely. I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind, that when we are doing something for our babies, it's kind of laying the foundation of how things are going to pan out in their relationship with food, sleep, their own body, and everything in the future as well. So it's good to be mindful, and it's good to be well informed about how to change
Yeah.
our mindset around these
I
things.
love this line I get. Like, few people are like, yeah, but every adult eats themselves. So why do we have to bother with our kids? Like, they'll figure out how to eat themselves. And I'm like, sure,
Yeah.
we all eat ourselves. But how many of us have issues with our food? How many people are pre diabetic? How many of us have high cholesterol? How many of us have autoimmune conditions? And all of these are stemmed from our relationship with food from the beginning. So
Yeah.
even now, when my kids are like, I give them food and they're like, we're full and there's a bit left, I'm like, okay, are you listening to your body? I said, you don't need to finish it, but just listen to your body. And I feel that also makes them
Yeah.
a bit happier to sit at meal times because they know they're not going to be
Yeah.
forced to finish their food.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's such an important thing to keep in mind as well. So, Sanjita, tell me something. So we have spoken about, like, since we're kind of sailing back to like that
Yes.
6-ish a
Yes.
month mark, right? And now we
Yeah.
know that we want to start around
Around
six
six
months. Doesn't have to
months.
be
Yeah.
exactly at 6 months. Four very important signs that you have given that we have to look out for, which, trust me, 98% of the parents would not know about this, what you have
I
just
know.
shared.
It's crazy.
The
I
whole thing with the
know.
tongue reflex and the minimal support that you need to,
Yeah. We didn't know
and the whole
that.
the hand-eye
Yeah.
coordination. I had no idea that's
Right.
something we need to look out for.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is a very common thing as well, that
Right.
again I get in my programs, that for my clients, like, okay, what do we feed our kid?
Yeah.
What? My mom fed my kid dal pani and rice cereal. Is that what you start with? Or do you start with veggies? Do you start with fruits? Do you start with the rice cereal? Do you start with Cerelac?
Yeah.
What do you start with?
Right. And this is so interesting because I started with rice cereal because I again was so confused
Same,
and I
same.
followed this one book that I use for sleep and my kids were sleeping pretty decent. So I was like, okay, let me follow the food plan. And it was the worst thing ever. But anyways, I think for both of us we've learned that instead of being upset by the mistakes we've made, we've empowered ourselves and now we're able to help parents and this is what's got us to what we're doing
Yeah.
today. Two very important things that I always get. Okay. Number one, everyone says you have to start with savory, otherwise your baby will have a sweet tooth. Like that's why they do dal. They do dal ka pani,
Yeah.
they do rice because they're like, your baby's only going to want to eat sweet stuff. So
Yeah.
reality check parents, just remind you breast milk and formula are already sweet. So your baby already has a sweet tooth. It's human nature for us to have
Yeah.
sweet tooth, right? A lot of
Yeah.
us do. But I want you to know that even if you give your child dal for 10 days, doesn't mean they're not going to like apple. And there's nothing wrong with fruits or your child having a sweet tooth. So it doesn't matter what you
Yeah.
start with. What I tell my clients is let's do a variety. Just give them a
Yeah.
variety of foods from fruits and veggies. Let's build their taste buds. Let's build their gut. Let's make it strong. Just start with anything. So, for example, my clients, we normally start with pumpkin because the orange color is quite bright. So, kids get excited and the taste is different every time. So, and then the next day we do like zucchini. So, some people are like, oh, but zucchini has like no taste. But it doesn't matter. For babies, it's about them building that, getting the vitamins, and just seeing the different colors
Yeah.
and taste of it. So don't worry about what you start
Yeah.
with, guys, and no need to start with dal ka pani, or rice cereal. And the second thing is they say, oh, you have to do each food for 3 days. So like banana 3 days or apple 3 days,
Done
and
that.
that's what I did because they're like, oh, so and all of these things, if you actually just sit back and think about it, like how I was explaining
Yeah.
about, then you realize, wait, you don't have to. So even with the food, right? Suppose you give your child apple at 10 a.m. What are we looking for? Are
Yeah.
they constipated? Are they gassy? Is there an allergy? You will know
Yeah.
within that day if there are any of those symptoms. So you don't need to give
True.
apple
True.
3 days in a row. Of course, we're going to give apple
Yeah.
again. We're going to give it next week. We're going to give it with our oats or ragi. So it's not like your child will never have apple again, but doing it 3 days in a row
Yeah.
is boring for them. And now it's all about gut
Yeah.
health. So the best thing for your gut is to give variety. So move on to the
Yeah.
next food the next day. You don't have to do the same thing. So once you actually sit
Yeah.
and understand the reasoning behind it, you realize like you don't have to follow these outdated information that we're given.
True, true. I think that's such an important point to remember. Just give variety. Don't hang on to the same food for 3 days. Because I did that, and I think by the end of the first month, we had done like 6 foods. Because
Yeah.
we did 3 days per food, and we repeated some of them. Because we were like, hey,
Yeah.
you know what? She really liked banana. Maybe we should just give more banana. Because again, I was stressed
Oh
about
my
the
god.
quantity of
Yes.
food that she was eating.
Yes.
So we were just like, okay, let's keep going back to the safe foods. And that is,
I
I
know.
think,
And
an
then you're
issue, right? Because we're
limiting,
not.
yeah, you're limiting their variety. And you put that food in
Exactly.
everything so that they eat more. But again, that's not the
Yeah.
point. So guys, don't worry about quantity. Focus on quality and variety.
Yeah, that is such an important point to mention. And Sanjita, you mentioned something in the middle. It's like about like, okay, how zucchini can be boring, right? What do you
Mm,
think about seasonings for younger babies?
yeah.
What do you think we can add to kind of make the food more flavorful for them and expand their palate?
So many of my clients come and tell me that, oh, my in-laws are saying add salt to the foods because that's why your child is not eating, right? So again, this is the
Yeah,
influence of the parents and in-laws and all of that, and they just are doing the best they can. Of course, we love them, but
yeah,
no
yeah,
salt and sugar in the first year. That's not happening. But that doesn't mean your child's food needs to be bland. Imagine eating plain chicken and
yeah.
dal without any flavor. Would you want to eat it? No. So my clients, we are adding jeera, dhania, garlic, tomato, paprika. We are building their taste buds. So my clients actually by 8, 9
Right.
months, their babies are eating from the family pot. So no, we cannot do salt and sugar. Sugar has zero nutrition,
Wow.
so that's done. Salt, honestly, formula and breast milk already have salt. So we don't want to add
Yeah.
salt to their foods because we're just not sure if babies can handle it. So we have to be on the safe side.
Salt is a big one. It was such a funny thing that happened. Like I took my kid back and she was, I don't know, like 8, 9 months old. I took her back to my parents' place. And my dad and her, they sat down next to each other for breakfast. And then my dad
Yeah.
was eating boiled eggs and my daughter was eating boiled eggs. And my dad just took the salt shaker. He sprinkled salt on his eggs. And then he extended his hand and sprinkled salt on my daughter's eggs. And I'm sitting there and watching, and I'm like, why did you just do that? He's like, but it's so tasteless. I'm like, she doesn't know that. She doesn't know the
Exactly.
taste of salt. You are the one who's, you need that to salt your eggs, but she doesn't. So I went and literally washed her eggs and then offered it back to her. It's
Yeah,
such
yeah.
a, it's,
Yeah,
so
and
many people
yeah.
don't understand that.
And look, end of the day, see, if your child is wants to try something you're having, like a baby, and has a bit of salt, totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's not that we need to sit and add salt to every food, because like we eat hard boiled egg on its own, and yes, of course, chicken and dal, we will add the flavors to it. But yeah, we do
Yeah.
not need to add the salt. And post one, look, salt has a lot of minerals and the body can handle it. It's just that because till
Yeah.
one, just we have to be a bit careful. So, but
Most
post one, you can add a pinch
Yeah.
of salt to their foods. It's totally okay. But yeah, we
Yeah.
just need to be a bit aware. But yeah, this happens. I think what the story you shared, I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to, where the parents were just
Yeah.
wanting to add salt to the kids' food.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely it. And what's your take about on like jaggery? If not
Right. So,
sugar,
sure. Yeah. So honestly, end of the day, jaggery is still sugar. It's 10% minerals, 90% sugar. It's still going to cause that blood
yeah.
sugar spike and all of that. Of course, jaggery is a little bit more natural form. And honestly, I do get a little bit annoyed with some food companies who say no added sugar, all natural, because it's very misleading for parents, because they're like, oh, there's no sugar in
Yeah.
it, it's all natural, but it's still causing that blood sugar spike. It's still affecting the gut and all of that. So I say, honestly,
Yeah.
till 2 years of age, even honey, jaggery, all of that, limited. Like post one here and there, once a week, you can add jaggery a little bit. That's fine. But try and avoid till two,
Mm-hmm.
because the body still will process it is as sugar. And if you really start the right way with your kids, they'll be happy to eat foods. Like most of my clients, they're like, oh, we didn't even need to give our kids sugar. Of course, the grandparents will come with their biscuits. And I always
Yeah.
tell my clients, and I've been through this also, I'm like, choose your battles. Let them post one. If they want to have one cookie, like, it's fine. You focus on what you can control, because for a lot of parents and
Yeah.
grandparents, that's the memories, right? Sharing a cookie with their child, with the grandchild, and all of
Yeah.
that.
The chai
You
biscuit.
know, yeah, exactly. And they'll even give that. And so I was like, guys, look, let them do that. Obviously, set some limits, but it's okay. Nothing's going to happen. It's fine. But you consciously do
Yeah.
not add jaggery in their pancake. That will really help.
True. Just to get them to eat more, because they most likely will. If you add jaggery to their porridge or their pancake or their
Yeah,
cereal, they are going to eat it more, because sugar is sugar after at the end of the day. But that's not
yeah,
the goal,
exactly.
right?
Yes. That
So
is, and I've worked with over 1,000 babies, and I can tell you the biggest difference, and I'm sure you can relate as well. The biggest difference with the kids who become picky eaters and the ones that don't is the parents who have the right mindset, and they are like, I'm going to focus not on quantity. And those parents, the kids
yes.
eat beautifully, they listen to their body,
Yeah.
they're willing to try everything, they sit at mealtime. And I think
Yeah.
honestly, like for this episode, I would think that is one of the biggest takeaways.
Yeah.
So one is when to start solid. Start around 6 months when your child is meeting the signs. Don't listen to other
Yeah.
people, listen to your baby and make sure those signs are
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And the second thing is have the right attitude, and don't worry about all this outdated information. Take it in and say, okay, but I'm really going to make a difference as a modern Indian parent. I'm going to do something else, and I'm going to make sure that we're so lucky we have so much info now that we can actually use it to our advantage. And there's studies
Yeah.
backing it up as well, which is great. And yeah, so I would say really just start around 6 months, give your child a variety of flavors, and focus on skill and not on quantity. And this is what I do with my clients literally every day. And it's so great, because if you need more help in terms of what to offer your child or how to start, I have one on one programs. I have a course as well. So if you're like, I just want to kind of listen and learn while my child is sleeping, you can easily get the course. And it literally, what we are talking about, it just has everything in detail, and you will not need to look anywhere else. It has all the updated information. I also have meal plans. So that's what I do, and I love it because I see the difference, and it's amazing to see kids actually enjoying meal times.
That's so amazing. Like, I think definitely, if you're listening to this episode, definitely check out the resources that Sanchita has to share on starting solids. She's really a maestro in the starting solids field. And if you're an Indian parent, I think I love that her resources are catered to Indian families in a lot of
Yes.
ways.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is something worth checking out. Um, and this is the end of our first episode. If you're listening and you like this episode, drop us a review. Just there is a little star rating up on whatever platform you're listening to. Follow us on Instagram. I'm going to drop the handle for our Instagram right in the show notes. And
Yep.
let me tell you something very interesting you're going to expect in the next episode. We'll be talking about something that is keeping you up at night. Your baby. Your baby who's waking up every
Yep.
2 hours. We're
Oh
going to
my
talk about in
God.
the next episode why this is happening, and I'll break it all down for you. So tune in to our second episode.
Amazing. Looking forward to it. Thank you all for joining. Have a lovely
Okay.
day, afternoon, evening.